Hey everybody. So every enterprise has an AI strategy, but very few have a AI reality. The gap between the two is where the real problem lies. And that's the conversation we are going to have today. I am Abhinandan and I'm going to host this panel. The theme of this discussion is going to be around building new age AI capabilities for business growth, customer transformation, and efficient operations. But behind those words sits a very different problem where AI runs, how it's governed, how it scales across sector, how it holds up in production, and how it pays for itself. Now, let's hear it from the practitioners who are actually building this. Let me start off with you, Vidya. You work on private AI and secure enterprise infrastructure at Cohesity. Why is private AI suddenly back in the conversation? And what's the infrastructure decision that quietly decides whether enterprise AI scales or stalls?
Sure. Hi, Abhinandan. Hello, everyone. At the beginning of GenAI wave, most organizations focused on speed of experimentation. Thanks to cloud AI services who made it very easy to quickly test co-pilots, assistants, and AI-driven workflows. But now enterprises are moving from sandbox to the real-world experimentation to operationalization. And that changes the ballgame entirely. We aren't just playing around with the public data anymore. Now, companies are hooking up to their crown jewels, which is customer records, financial data, intellectual property, and operational workflows. That is why private AI is coming back strongly into the conversation. Look at the highly regulated sectors like banking, healthcare, or telecom. They're asking the multi billion-dollar question: how do we ride the AI wave without letting out the data, governance, and compliance go off the rails? I mean, let's be real. A bank can't just throw the customer transaction data at the public LLM endpoint and hope for the best. That's the recipe for the disaster, right? And this is where we are seeing increased interest in the private AI and hybrid AI architectures, where organizations want the power of Gen AI along with the controlled and secured enterprise environment. But here's the kicker: the moment you decide to productionalize AI securely, the bottleneck shifts from the model to the infrastructure readiness. Can we efficiently manage GPU resources? Can we scale inference workflows? Can we securely orchestrate AI across hybrid environments? And most importantly, can we protect the very data that's fueling the whole system? At Cohesity, we see the AI success isn't just about picking the right or the smartest model, but it's all about how well you manage the entire AI data and the infrastructure lifecycle. To make AI operationally efficient and scalable, infrastructure technologies like GPU partitioning, Kubernetes or the OpenShift orchestration, and secure data pipelines are suddenly taking the center stage. So, if I had to live with one thought, it's this: the next phase of the enterprise AI won't be won by the companies who have the smartest models, but by whoever can operationalize AI securely, efficiently, and responsibly at scale. Yes, Abhi.
Thanks, Anusha, and sorry, thanks, Vidya. And you have brought in some very good points around infrastructure readiness and also the data protection, especially when it comes to financial sectors, banks, and all. The data protection and the governance is of utmost importance. Yeah. Nanda, every enterprise is spending on AI, but very few can show the return. In your view, is it a operating model problem, a governance problem, or a business use case problem?
Hi, Abhinandan. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah. So from my view, it's an operating model problem because the governance and business value become downstream effects of operational maturity. So initially, AI pilots may succeed technically, but fail operationally at scale. Because the core challenge here is operationalizing across the workflows, governance, economics, and enterprise decisions. Let me explain with a small story. Like, consider a bank is introducing an AI assistant for wealth advisors. So portfolio summaries are generated in hours. Usually, now it takes in minutes. Leadership is happy. They rapidly expand the copilot across other departments like retail banking copilots. Then customer service builds their own separate AI assistants. Then compliance creates its own AI workflows. Now the enterprise has an disconnected AI systems. So the hidden complexity here is a single advisory request triggers the CRM retrieval, vector search, compliance checks, recommendation engines, and now the workflow orchestration spans multiple AI agents. So one workflow may have involve some 8 to 15 LLM calls and multiple AI operations. If you look at the scale, some 1,000 employees using, you will be able to clearly notice an inference workloads and governance overhead rise rapidly. Fragmented copilots and duplicate vector stores emerge, and unmanaged prompts and disconnected agents increase the complexity. What we can tell this as an AI operational debt. And the example which we saw now is what AI-enabled enterprise, which they deploy an isolated AI tools, causing the real problem here. So we have to move to an AI native enterprises where redesigning the intelligence flows across the workflows, which will have a centralized orchestration, shared governance become more critical. So in operationalizing the enterprise AI, key things we have to look is centralized is orchestration, shared governance, reusable AI foundations, and having an intelligent model routing based on use case and enterprise-wide observability. With this ecosystem, even with an integrated system, cost and operational behavior must remain individually traceable. Then only you'll have the workflow level traceability for LLM cost and AI return on investment. And at this scale, the hallucination becomes an operational trust problem at scale. And risk-based human oversight for a use case basis is really important. So with this complete native AI native enterprise ecosystem, you will have a clear clarity of the cost per workflow, cost for AI assisted decision, for an advisory, how much cost it has taken. You will have the clear business outcome impact. And as a closing thought, I would say the future winners will operationalize the intelligence sustainably, govern it continuously, and balance AI autonomy with trusted human oversight at scale. Thank you. Over to you, Abhinandan.
Absolutely, Nanda, and very well put, especially how you see the future leaders. And like you also mentioned, the operational problem, it again comes to the infrastructure readiness. So that becomes a very important point. Now, Anusha, your research cuts across multiple sectors. Where do you see agentic AI genuinely changing the business operations, and in which sector is it still a demo?
Okay, Abhinandan, thank you for the question. If we talk about how it is changing, how agentic AI is changing the businesses, and which one is the maximized profitable in it, it would be healthcare. The agentic AI, it is genuinely uh, being adopted by the healthcare sector. Growing adoption can be attributed to the factors like growing concerns or growing demand for customized healthcare solutions for services. This can be one of the factors. The transformative shift in the healthcare sector, it is in terms of adoption to scale. So the key measurable impacts can be in terms of operating efficiency, can be in terms of workflow management, um, it can be comprehensive personalization, but the adoption curve for agentic AI in the healthcare sector, it is slightly different from the other sectors. Unlike other segments, the healthcare segment, it is emphasizing basically on the operational, on the administrative workflow management more. There are different applications which includes like CDSS, clinical decision support systems, drug discovery, personalized treatment, diagnostics, but majorly it is being used for orchestrating the administrative complicated workflows, because it cannot replicate the physical care, it cannot replicate the empathy, but it can, what I can say, it can act as a hyper intelligent backend engine. When you talk about demo would be, I would say, public sector and the government services. Most of the governments across the world, they are still preparing to embrace agentic AI. If we take the example of Middle Eastern region, in the Middle Eastern region, to redefine the way the government functions, to redefine the way it actually gels up with the changing market dynamics, the UAE government has announced the plan to integrate agentic AI in half of its sector operations, which would be within next 2 years, positioning itself as at the forefront of the autonomous governance. If we take the example of South Asian countries, Singapore, it has announced the unveiling of the world's first model AI governance framework, which explicitly talks about, which explicitly designed focuses on the designing of the agentic AI systems for autonomous decision making, for autonomous processes. In India, 90% of the government services and the public sectors, they are still in the phase of exploring and putting in the implementing the agentic AI in their systems. So but the data readiness is always a challenge and will always be a challenge. So agentic AI, it is already being altered at the tactical landscape, but the governments across, they have to be very much particular about how they balance the agility, how they balance the accountability as they adopt these pioneering technologies. Yeah.
Thanks, Anusha. And while it's good to hear that about the healthcare sector, it's where we see a lot of growth.
Mm.
What is also very exciting to hear is the sector, the public sector and the government, where it's still a demo, but we see a lot of exciting things which is happening and a lot of exciting things which is coming towards us in the next few years. So
Yeah.
really hope it works out well and we all benefit from that as well.
Yeah.
Now, Nishkam, you ship production AI for Fortune 500 clients. When an agentic system fails in production, where does it fail first? And why don't most of the enterprises see it coming?
All right. So thanks, Abhinandan, for an interesting question. I think the first thing that I would say is agentic systems rarely fail first at the model layer. In my experience, what I've seen is they typically fail at the context layer. And this is where many enterprises underestimate the problem. See, if you're looking at a demo, right, the context is clean, data source is controlled, workflow is scripted, document is known, blah, 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 right? But in production, context is messy. The same business term can mean different things across different systems, teams, region, processes, things like these. And this is what I call it as a semantic variance. So if I have to explain it with an example, let's say one system may call it as a customer, another may call it an account, while another may call it as a sold to party. Another example could be in a contract, effective date may not mean the same thing as a start date in an ERP systems. What happens is human naturally adjust to this because we understand the business nuances. But an agentic system may retrieve the right looking information and still interpret the it in a wrong way, right? This is where the failure actually begins. And also the failure is usually not very loud, it's subtle. What happens is the AI gives a confident answer based on the semantic misaligned context, and the another agent picks it up, and that's how the error basically multiplies and eventually leads to your context failure. That is why, in my opinion, I believe the production AI needs more than good prompts and good models. It needs a strong semantic backbone, it needs a knowledge layer that understands definitions, relationships, business rules, source of truths, boundaries, permissions, ownerships, right? This becomes even more important in an agentic system because agents do not just answer questions. Nowadays, agents are supposed to take decisions, they have call tools, they have trigger workflows, they have influence basically the business outcomes. So my simple answer would be agentic systems fail first when they do not understand the real business meaning of the context they are operating on. And most enterprises do not see it coming because they test for response quality, but not enough for semantic consistency, context drift, or even operational reliability. A model can be very intelligent, but if the context is wrong, right? If the context is stale, fragmented, or semantically inconsistent, that's where the system will fail. To summarize my thoughts, production AI is not just a model engineering problem. It's a context engineering, governance plus system engineering problem. Thanks, Abhinandan.
Absolutely, Nishkam. And that is what we are also seeing in our day to day life as well. like you rightly mentioned, when you're building demos, the context is super tight, everything works pretty well. But when you take it to production, your context decays, it drifts, and your guardrails are not in place. So over time, it fails in production while the demo was perfectly working fine. And it is very important to keep on monitoring the context, ensuring the drift is not there, there's no decay, and also ensuring that the guardrails are in place to uh, have a very good prototype to production flow. Now, why do you think that enterprises are aware of this but still not able to see it coming?
So it's not like not able to see it. I think detect it, right? As I said, that's very subtly. So what I mean by that is the agents are hallucinating to a certain point. So for example, let's say you want to retrieve, let's say, rates from a table, right? That rate table could be amount underscore rates, it could be r underscore amount, it could be anything, right? So those business glossaries, those domain knowledge, that enterprise knowledge fabric layer, right, which is required, that context layer is required. It's not usually very refreshed, and the system, the AI agents basically assumes few things, and that's how they build on top of it. And one agent, if it basically assumes a wrong column, it passes on that wrong information to the another agent, so the entire workflow goes for a toss. So that's how the error also basically propagates further in the workflow. And more importantly, I mean, from an end user perspective, you will see right numbers, or you will see almost right numbers. It's very difficult to debug in an agentic system.
Absolutely. Now, coming to you, Siddharth, you build the business cases for scaling AI at Linde, right?
Yep.
What is the one number leaders most often get wrong in the ROI model? And when does the answer point to a build versus buy?
Great question. Thanks, Abhinandan. I would want to split this into two parts, the ROI piece and the make versus buy piece, because I think both have a fundamental flaw on how they are typically being approached. On the ROI, the numbers leaders most often get wrong isn't the projected return, it's the value of the problem itself. Most AI business cases that I've seen always start with a solution. Someone goes to a fancy conference, they see a great demo, a very compelling demo, gets excited, wanted to work backwards just to justify it. The ROI numbers is almost always fiction here because it is never grounded on the actual problem. What I do before any solution is even on the table is a commercial value assessment. I map the pain points operationally where, and I try to identify where the friction is, the delay, the rework, and then tie them directly back to the cost and the productivity impact that each of this has. That gives me the value of the problem even before I have decided to solve the problem. What I feel is there needs to be a shift in the mindset that you are not building business cases for AI. You are building a business case for solving the problem. AI may be or may not be the answer, but you have already established that the problem is real and the commercially meaningful value can be derived out of it. So that being said, when you ask about make or buy framework, I would say this five parameters. First one, if a solution already exists in the market that can solve 80% of your problem out of the box, buying is always most faster and cheaper. Number two is scalability. A licensing model that looks attractive at a pilot can become commercially unavailable when the volume is almost 10x, right? So scalability is one. The third is complexity. Generic solutions are being built for generic problem, but at an enterprise level, when your use cases are very highly specific, you need off the shelf solutions that fit in. So about the complexity and about your data security and compliance. And the last one is about the total cost of ownership. It is not just the licensing, but it is the integration, customization, and the maintenance and the vendor lock-in. All that fits in into the model should be accounted for. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Siddharth. And I think you brought a very valid point of always calculating the commercial value of the solution. And that is something which we all should do even before creating the prototypes, like you rightly mentioned. Now, it was great to hear all of you. If I can ask you one quick question, all of you, before we close this. So I'll start with you, Vidya. Like, what is that one infrastructure mistake you see enterprises repeat over and over again?
Sure. The mistake I see repeatedly as per the enterprises focus heavily on selecting the AI model, but underestimate the importance of infrastructure readiness and the data architecture. Many organizations still approach AI as a standalone experimentation project instead of an operational platform. So they build impressive demos, but they try to scale. When they try to scale, they run into issues around GPU utilization, storage bottlenecks, security, governance, and orchestration. As models continue to commoditize, the real differentiator is not just the model access, but whether the organization has a secure, scalable, and operationally efficient AI infrastructure foundation. Yeah, this is my take on it.
Thanks, Vidya. Nishkam, what's that one signal that tells you an AI system is about to fail in production?
All right. So the one signal that I look for is trust erosion. What happens is like when users start double checking every output, bypassing the AI workflow, or let's say creating manual workarounds, right? The failure has already started. The dashboards that you have built for monitoring and looking at your models, they may still look green, right? But the trust has started breaking. So in an enterprise AI, right, once trust breaks, adoption drops very quickly. That's what I have observed. So the early signal is not the technical drift, in my opinion. It's when the business users stop believing that the system understands their context correctly.
Thanks, Nishkam. Anusha, which industry is moving on agentic AI faster than people even realize?
Um, in terms of faster, if you ask me, it would be supply chain and logistics. So basically, in supply chain, the ROI is immediate, the ROI is measurable. It can be quantified in terms of cost, fuel, and time. So, and it has a lot of benefits that it is offering in terms of freight moves, the like the technology. It helps in the back office financial reconciliations. It helps in augmenting the demand forecasting, optimizing the inventory costs, and the logistics costs. So there are a lot of things like that. But yes, the ROI, it is measurable. So that would be one factor. And it is also at a very faster rate. It is changing the supply chain industry from the reactive process to the self-operating systems. So the faster one would be supply chain and logistics. Yeah.
Awesome. Siddharth, what's the fastest way to tell whether an AI business case is real or it's just wishful thinking?
Simple, go back to the problem. If the business case started with a solution and worked backwards, it is visual thinking. If it started with a quantified pain point and it ties directly to the cost and productivity, it has a chance of being real problem. The second thing I would say is who owns the outcome. If the business case lives in a deck owned by the tech team or a COE, it's going to be visual thinking forever. If a business leader or a P&L owner or an ops head has signed up for a specific metric and a timeline, that's when you know it's real, because the it's always problem first and business owner accountable. Everything is just a fancy slide.
Thanks, Siddharth. Finally, Nanda, what's that one question every AI leader should be asked in their next board meeting?
Yeah, from my perspective, as I say, are we scaling AI capabilities or sustainable intelligence with governance, accountability, and measurable business outcomes? So the key strategic differentiator here will be the governance and the AI economics and the operational trust. So I think it's resonating with the other speakers what they told as well, and even Nishkant was mentioning about that. Considering the hallucination, the trust is so that operational trust is more important for a better adoption and better efficiency. Yeah, that's my thought. Thank you.
So here we go, folks. Like we saw the five lenses which solves one problem: infrastructure, economics, sector reality, production failure, and the business cases. So enterprise AI isn't just one conversation, it's all of these conversations happening in parallel. And the organizations that win, they don't pick a favorite from this. So thank you all. Thanks all the panelists. And thank you folks for listening in.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.